perfection is not the goal. The rougher the edges, the more authentic it feels. And the storytelling is really what happens in those moments, because that's often where people are the most vulnerable.
Ken Fuchs definitely knows how to tell authentic stories. He's been directing some of the most popular shows on TV for decades. He's directed 42 seasons of the Bachelor/Bachelorette franchise. He's been with them since almost the beginning. He's also directed Family Feud for 20 years and Shark Tank for 14 years. And that's just part of his resume. I'm Elizabeth Pearson Garr, and on this episode of the Experience Podcast, we get a seat in the control room. We're going behind the scenes of unscripted reality TV. Thank you so much for being here on my podcast. It's great to see you.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I want to talk a little bit about kind of clarifying what you do in your work, because I feel like a lot of people think director and they think of maybe a theater director. We've done maybe school plays and things, and what you do is quite different because you do unscripted shows. I would think perhaps television director of a scripted show is maybe more akin to theater directing.
In the genre I'm in, it's called non-scripted reality, and that covers talk, variety, music, stand-up. Sometimes it involves actors and sometimes it involves scripts, but live TV, event TV, competition, that whole genre of like daytime talk, late night talk is all in that same sort of genre of shows that I direct. But the difference is that you're not working with a cast of actors and necessarily like breaking down a script and blocking the script and rehearsing and then doing the show. So, and sort of lucky I fell into it at a time where it was just beginning and everyone was like, oh, that's weird and cute. And what is that? We weren't at the big boy table for a while. And then as the years have progressed, people have realized like, oh, people like this form of entertainment and they like this on their television. It's probably cheaper to produce in some ways. And so sort of has taken off.
Even though you do a lot of it, you do a variety of it. I think that each of your shows requires different skill sets for you.
Yes,
right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And that keeps it really fresh for me, because Hollywood, in all fields, they tend to want to kind of pigeonhole you a little bit and identify you, and you do this, you know?
Yeah.
So I started in multi-camera, live, like big event television, like award shows and music specials and things like that. So that's how I came up in the business, through production and game shows. There's always been game shows. There'll always be game shows. And then this reality TV kind of idea came along 20 years ago, I guess. And that opened the door to new kinds of storytelling. And it wasn't really clear who the directors would be. Like some came from editing and some came from scripted, but coming from my background kind of was a nice fit and it blended well. So yeah, I like doing all different kinds. I really do. They're similar in a lot of ways, but they're also very different. And I like mixing it up for sure.
Can you talk about the differences, say when you're on the set of Family Feud versus Shark Tank versus The Bachelor or something? Because sometimes you're kind of creating the story right there as you're directing in the control room, and sometimes the story is created in the editing room afterwards. So your job is different.
Right. Well, I would say it's both all the time. So my job is the same in one respect, which is telling a story. Mm-hmm. So I'm just storytelling, whether it's Steve Harvey and there's material and we throw to the board, and that game show has more of a format and less post-intensive, versus Bachelor, which is, there's also sort of a structure, but it's more post-intensive. There's more editing. Obviously, there's more shooting. There's more hours of footage. And then Shark Tank is sort of in the middle. It's sort of like a hybrid in that it's sort of a reality show taken onto a stage. So my jobs look very similar. You know, I'm either in a truck or a control room or a garage that we've turned into a control room. But no matter how you cut it, I'm talking to crews and I'm staring at 20 to 120 monitors.
Wow.
And I'm picking shots and I'm directing the crew and talking to lighting and art and props and wardrobe and hair and makeup and the producers. and sort of figuring out what's next. And it's funny, in a way, it's sort of similar, but Bachelor is sort of the most different, and Feud is the most sort of live to tape. We overshoot, but it's as close to, studio audience and ready, go. And we integrate more of the elements in terms of music and graphics. Whereas on Bachelor, we don't integrate any of those elements because we would never know where they would fit and what material is, how it's going to get edited together. So there's similarities and differences.
So on something like Family Feud, what's kind of the workflow? Do you personally do a lot of pre-production, or is most of your work as soon as you hit the studio that day?
With Feud, it's like, one way to look at it is sort of in terms of like, I think this helps people, just getting back to your last question, in terms of like shooting ratio. So how much do you shoot for how much do you air? So in some cases, it's a 2-hour show and we shoot 100 hours. And wow. Just accumulating a ton of content and creating a show. And then on the other end of the spectrum is live TV. So that's a 1-to-1 ratio. Everything you shoot, like last week we did the Bachelor finale, everything we shot aired in that moment. So that's my dream. That's my favorite. And then in between, there's something like Feud. We shoot as if it's live, but we overshoot a little so we can tighten it up. And then Shark Tank, again, is somewhere in the middle where it's like, with not as much as Bachelor and not as little as Feud, a little more editing, and I'll do a line cut. So one of the differentiators in my business is whether the director is going to cut the cameras live or not. And I like to do it. I sort of err on the side of doing it because I think it gives the producers and the post people their first rough cut, if you will. I know it'll change a lot. Feud changes less than Shark Tank. But with Bachelor, I don't do it at all because it's hugely exhausting and difficult and a little expensive. And it wouldn't really help them because scenes don't play out in long form. They're sort of like a soundbite here. I mean, everyone knows how those shows work. So that's sort of a differentiator too in my job. On my day-to-day level on Feud, there's pre-production. We do set design, lighting, sound effects, graphics. We've been very consistent with those things over the years. Casting is a whole nother area, a whole nother department that falls under a producer's realm. Material is producers. Dealing with the host, Steve Harvey, is more the producers. So when I come in, my prep is getting the crew organized and together and hired for that season and rehearsing them and sort of getting them up to speed. And we've been very consistent, very lucky with a very similar crew every year, every day. So it's really lovely. It's a very tight-knit family. It makes the workflow so much smoother. And then we do a couple shows in the morning and go to lunch and come back and do a couple more shows. So we do 4 half hours and it's quite nice. We say the first word in Family Feud is family, and it's because we are so close, and all the shows are actually very close.
So that's 20 shows a week then, if you're doing 4 a day?
Yeah, some days we do 5, but not every week is 5 days a week. It's a lot for a host. It's a lot of energy, and it's a lot of on your feet. Some shows are easier physically. Feud's pretty demanding. That's the syndicated Feud. So in syndication TV, you can deliver to the stations, whatever that deal is. I think 200 shows, or it's like 50 tape days.
And how do you feel at the end of a taping day of that? Are you kind of exhausted because you're having to be really on and focused on everything for 4 shows?
Yeah, it's pretty tiring. It's invigorating when you're doing it. You're in the moment. You're just alive and so excited and so much stimulation and so much going on. And then you definitely don't go fall asleep right away. You have to sort of unwind.
I talked in a different episode with someone who's a sports producer for CBS Sports. And I was saying one thing that must be so exciting about your job is that you are so present. It's the kind of thing where you're not just phoning it in. You're actually really focused and present in your job. And that's kind of a blessing.
Yes, that's right. I feel very, very, very blessed to have fallen into this and have this as a career, because it just suits my temperament very well. And I'm so happy doing it.
What if you're having a really bad day, or you're just tired that day or something? You just have to get yourself up, I guess.
100%. That's exactly right. There's no bad days. Some days are more of a grind, and you have to just keep your head down and really find your inspiration and your energy from your crew and people around you and producers, and do your job. And then other days come more easily. But it all beats anything else I see out there. So
how do you manage all the different shows? Does Shark Tank also do several on a day?
Shark Tank will do like 22 because it's a network. So we shoot a couple a day. So Shark Tank's a much shorter season because we're not doing as many episodes. But yeah, we're doing all day, a bunch of pitches, a bunch of companies, and then those get edited into episodes. We've typically had 4 companies in an episode, and we'll shoot anywhere from like 8 to 10 a day. It's a busy, busy day.
And so you're calling out the cameras.
Right.
So it's not completely live to tape, right? For Shark Tank?
Shark Tank is like live to tape. We don't stop unless there's a technical difficulty. We try to kind of let it all unfold in real time, because I think that's the key to all of this entertainment, is that it feels very super authentic and not contrived or manipulated or like phony, or as you see, sometimes people forget what they were supposed to say, because they do rehearse their pitch, but sometimes they'll forget and they'll fumble, and the shark will go, that's okay, and they'll continue on or start over, because that's real life. If you were going into a VC pitch meeting, that could easily happen. And so we want it to feel kind of natural.
And if the sharks both want the same product and it gets a little heated, that's natural too. I mean, some people really question, is this really reality? Or do they know about the products ahead of time? Or is this really their money? And it really is. This is real.
And the reason you know it's real is that it works. And as you're watching it, it feels authentic. I hate to keep using that word, but like if the emotions are real and what people are saying is real, I think there've been obviously a bunch of knockoff shows and shows come and go. And I think viewers know when they're watching something that just feels absurd or contrived or overproduced, it's not as satisfying.
Yeah, it doesn't ring true. And I think then the show doesn't last.
Right. That's right. And the beauty of the Shark Tank is that if they were to know what was coming up next and had done all the research, then they wouldn't have the discovery process, of like, who are you? What's your background? What, like all those questions and all that fact finding is kind of fun. It's part of the show.
Yeah.
And, if they didn't have to do it, or if they were faking it, it just wouldn't ring true.
Yeah. And then you as the viewer feel like they're learning along with you. So that's part of the fun of it too. We're all kind of in that discovery process together.
That's exactly right. And the sharks are really great at that because they're such curious people. They're just lovely people, and they're just amazing human beings who are actually very curious about businesses and the people that come in there. And they also just very big hearts, and they love entrepreneurs, and they love the sacrifice, and they know what it takes to get there because they were all there. They were all like self-made millionaires, and they did it themselves, and they struggled. And so all their stories sort of come to light and come out in that dynamic of dealing with the person they're on the rug.
Yeah, that's good to know, because I think a lot of people are curious about the sharks because they seem kind of intimidating on TV, but they're just nice, real people too. I was wondering, because you're the director, so you're not intimidated by them, right? That's your domain.
Well, it's funny. It's a little intimidating. I mean, like I look at them and it's like, wow, they're so smart. Like, you'll see Mark Cuban look off and you'll be like, wow, he's really thinking of something big. They got big ideas. They're amazing, amazing people. But yes, other times I have to tell them like silly little TV thing, and it's only so they look good, but they're looking to us for advice. I mean, that's the other thing, is they're really smart about what they're doing and they want it to be great. And so they're happy to take any tips or advice. I really don't have much to offer because I honestly want them to be themselves as much as possible. If that's how they want to sit, that's how they sit. And that's how they cross their legs, that's how they cross their legs, or things like that.
And I'm sure on that show, on all the shows, like you mentioned on Family Feud, family comes first. The crew, I've worked in a different part of TV news. Everyone's dependent on everyone else. You're the director, so you're kind of the top of the food chain, but everyone needs everyone for this thing to go. So How do you develop that relationship with your crews and have everyone have that respect for each other?
Well, that's one of the most rewarding things. It really is. Over the years, and I've been doing this for 40 years now, and it's just a dream. My whole life has been so amazing. I sort of hearken it back to growing up. The things I enjoyed the most and got the most out of was probably team sports. I played a lot of sports. And then when I had my boys, I coached all their teams. And I just love that dynamic of everyone pulling together and for one common goal. And I think more than anything I learned in the classroom, I actually bring that to the table and create an atmosphere. I have a saying that in terms of respect, there's a chain of command, but there's not a chain of respect. It's not like somebody gets more respect because of their title. Everybody's treated equally. And thank God in the last few years, too, there's been this movement towards, less toxicity and stuff in the workplace. But I've always run my shows that way. I give people a lot of credit. I listen to a lot of ideas and I field questions and I just include people in the process. And that really, I think, has helped me develop a really great crew, a loyal crew, and a talented crew. There's a lot of variations between the shows, but there's a lot of key people that stay with me on all the shows because we have such a shorthand.
Well, I bet that's a real key to your success too, is your humility and your inclusion of other people. I would hope that that's kind of what helps people rise to the top is people who listen to other people and
yeah, there's definitely director. I mean, especially in film, there's directors who have more point of view that's more their own. It's sort of like how you deliver the message, but that's the only way I know how to do it because that's my true self. So I can't really be someone else. But I've lost jobs because of it. I think there's times people want to hire directors who are more screamers and yellers, and I get excited. I scream and I yell, but I try not to make it personal. I feel like if we missed a shot or if we missed something, that we sort of missed it together and that maybe I didn't rehearse the crew well enough or explain well enough what was about to happen or capture it. But it sort of comes back to me on me. I'll never point fingers because they only know what I've told them. And as long as they're paying attention and doing their best, it's sort of like you can't win them all.
yeah, things are going to go wrong. It's either live TV or it's live action anyway. It's not scripted. You can't do a lot of retakes, I would imagine. So it's life, right? You
Right.
can't be a huge perfectionist, I would imagine, in this profession.
Right. That's exactly right. It's a funny balance for me and a lot of people because I'm sort of a perfectionist. Like I'm a bit of a control freak in some ways, and that you have to sort of have a very strong plan and then be willing to deviate from that plan and then get back on the plan. But for sure, flexibility and perfection is not the goal. The rougher the edges, definitely the more authentic it feels. And the storytelling is really what happens in those moments because that's often where people are the most vulnerable. And if we try to have someone sit in a perfect light in a perfect chair while they're thinking about something they're about to say, and that distracts them, then that's the worst.
Can you think of some examples of where things have kind of gone quote unquote wrong, but they've actually been fine? Wrong, but turns out right? Or maybe not even turns out right.
Every time. No, it always turns out right. The truth is there really is no wrong. It's sort of like improv comedy, right? There's no. It's like whatever someone really feels and does, it may not be what we think is the best thing for the show, but the biggest thing comes to mind is Colton jumping over that fence that one season, or people are like, "Oh, did you practice that? Did you have him do There's no in a million years. If you see someone run into the dark and there's not a camera and you're hearing things that's usually not planned.
Right.
We rarely plan to not be able to cover something, and then you scramble and cameras running and that chaos that's not fake. That's all real. So it usually is fine. You have to make sure you have the pieces of it. And then later on, you can kind of interview or get a description of what happened or what someone was thinking. And that helps you kind of tie it together. We had one season where this guy sent the girl home and he was walking back to the proposal area and just broke down, just so painful. And the what he was feeling. The emotion was so intense. Now, we didn't know that was going to happen, and we certainly didn't know where that was going to happen, but it ended up happening on a railing of a balcony of a deck, and he's like leaning over the balcony, and it was unbelievable. Like, I couldn't have, if I had thought about how to block that scene for a scripted show 1,000 times, I couldn't have come up with anything better.
A perfect mistake.
Yes. I call them happy accidents.
A happy accident, yeah.
My life and my job and this world is full of them, and you just sort of have to look for them and embrace them, because that's really the key to a lot of this.
So the whole production of The Bachelor must be so different from, say, a Family Feud or a Shark Tank, because they're on stages, and The Bachelor, you're in a house, mansion, and you said the control room is a garage? Wherever
we are, it could be a garage, it could be a living room, it could be a hotel, whatever location we're in, we find a space to make a control room. And it's quite amazing, because we have like technical departments that create from scratch a control room with communications and monitors and audio. And with the audio and tech departments are so brilliant, and they work so hard to make that happen. Whereas like with a stage or with a truck show, the truck rolls in and it takes a couple of days to get the show up and running, and then it's like up and running in that one location. So we've been in incredible locations, and these guys work so hard lugging equipment around and making it work in funky countries and really funky locations.
That must be a challenge for you to kind of get used to the different setup and the different location, or is it kind of just plug and play? It's similar situation, different place?
Well, it's hard if it's 118 degrees, like in Thailand or something, if we're out on the beach. It's very hard. But yes, you plug and play in terms of like, in the end of the day, you sit down and you got your monitor wall and you put on your headset and you're talking to your crew, and that's it. Like, away you go. And you try not to think about how uncomfortable you are or how it could be better, because short of being in an air-conditioned control room with all the amenities and refrigerators and food and craft service, but that's sort of the fun too, right? Putting that show together is such a puzzle.
Can you kind of walk me through that? So you've got your headset on and you're talking to the crew. What's going on? Is it just constant communication and producers are with different cast members in different places, or what's happening through that whole shoot?
It really just depends on what we're shooting that day. Like, it could be as simple as our host checking in on the lead and having a sit-down interview. So in that case, it's like the producers will download to me the day before or a week before or 5 minutes before what's going to happen or what they expect to happen, what they'd like to see happen. And then for the host, we'll have some control over like where he walks in and how he walks in and stuff. But if it's a surprise, it's a little trickier. So then it's like one camera or two or three or six or 11, whatever you're shooting, you've sort of gone over it. You've kind of worked with production on the crew you'll need and all the elements of audio and video and art and lighting and tech that you'll need. And you try to have a quick little camera meeting, and then away you go, or look at something real quick or have a producer sit in. Like, you can't rehearse anything.
Yeah.
So you just do your best and then tell everyone what to expect, and then it all goes off the rails. And you love it and you make it great. And you tell the story. You just keep harping on that story from whoever's point of view you've decided that's the angle for that scene, that date, or that rose ceremony.
And that's you've decided on that, or that's with the producers?
No. That's all producers' realm. In terms of the content and the story, I don't really talk to the cast. Sometimes I'll see cast years later and they're like, I kind of remember you, but like, I don't talk to them as much as possible. I stay away because I don't really have much to offer. I don't even want them to see me, honestly. We want them to sort of forget there's cameras, forget there's crew, and try to behave like humans in a normal setting. So I'll work with the lead a little bit on how a rose ceremony works, just the mechanics of it. But again, once it starts, we don't stop. It's just live. That's sort of the fun thing about having come from live TV to reality TV. People think, oh, there's nothing live about it, but it is. It's at its best is when we can do big chunks of scenes live without interfering or stopping or saying anything, because they can start to feel more natural.
And those rose ceremonies are legendary at this point. I don't know if this is true, but people say they go like all night long. And I mean, are you up until 5 a.m? And
I can't say, but they are long, and you've seen some in the daylight. So that's some clue that they go long. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's really tough. Long, long, long days. But that's the business we chose, or the business chose us. I don't know what else I would be doing. So I love it, and it's exhausting, but it's what it takes. Not every day is like that.
Are you the only director, or do you get a break then, or how do they keep shooting?
Yeah, no, it's really great now. We have an awesome team. There's 4 of us. Early on, when we were doing 8 one-hour shows, it was much, much simpler show. And now we're 12 2-hour shows and specials, and it's become huge. So no one person could do it. Yeah, you need to take the next day to sleep or prep.
Okay.
And then we also can leapfrog countries, so someone can go and scout what they're going to need to shoot a few days later. And then I kind of stay with the show each place and do cocktail parties and rose ceremonies and things like that. And then the other guys do more of the dates.
So you've been all over the world with this show.
I think we've been to 65 countries or something. And then a few more than once, obviously Thailand and New Zealand and Mexico. And we've been to a few European countries more than once. Yeah, it's been amazing. But again, not for everyone. Every person has sort of their gift or their passion or whatever you think it is. And if it doesn't fit into this production mode, it's not for you, because some people want 9 to 5, sit at a desk, and that's what they're comfortable. And this is not that. But the travel's been great. I love, love, love travel. I've always traveled as a kid. And other than being away from my family, which is horrible, I take them when I can, but the travel has been incredible. What an opportunity.
About how much of the time are you on the road?
Let's see. We're probably on the road more than half the season, but it changes. Some seasons we do a few more episodes in LA or less, and then we usually do some domestic episodes.
You mentioned earlier that you love doing the live show.
Yeah.
What
Yes.
about that is really fun for you?
Well, for a director, it's the decision you make is the decision that gets made. There's no second guessing. So that shot, I take that shot, and that's the shot 10 million people see. So it's just taking an energy just from the moment we start prepping it, rehearsing, and working with the producers really closely in terms of their vision and helping bring that to life, and rehearsing and just getting it all. And then going on the air live, it's just that countdown, and that moment is unlike anything else. It's so exciting. Just great energy. That performance level, sort of like sports, but now you're getting to perform, and the camera people, everyone's just sort of a little more wired.
Hyped up for the moment.
Yep. And the audience too. I love seeing the audience load in and their energy. And now we're back to having an audience, so that's great. It's just so fun. They're so crazy. Bachelor Nation's such a big part of the show.
Oh, it's huge. I wanted to share with you that I have a niece and a nephew who are both college age, and they run these Bachelor Fantasy League things.
I've heard about those.
And last year they got my mom involved, so their grandma. So that's all these college kids and a grandma. And so she started watching. It was really cute. So they would have these Zooms with grandma, and she would weigh in I don't think that guy, because he seems a little too creepy for her. And it was multi-generational bachelorette watching.
Oh, that's so cool. That is cool.
Really
yeah,
sweet.
the shows I work on seem to all be kind of family friendly, and grandkids watching with their grandpas. And, I know a lot of families watch Family Feud, and it's really rewarding. I love that.
I have some questions from listeners about the Bachelor franchise. Can I ask you
Do my best.
a few of these? Okay, this one from Evan S. What was your favorite season?
Oh, that's a good question. It might have been my first season, which is interesting. But that season with Trista and with Ryan, and then ending up doing the wedding, which was like so big, so huge, and so fun, so exciting. And then more recently, we did like their 10-year anniversary and renew their vows and their kids, their lovely kids. And so to me, that was like kind of the gold standard in some ways, and very rewarding because or people want to say, oh, that'll never work. Like, you can't meet someone on television. Like, that's so stupid. But it only had to work once for people to not be able to say that anymore.
Yeah.
And it did. It worked that first time really early. And they're just lovely, lovely people. And now there have been, I don't know, a lot of weddings. I've done 4 of them or 5 of them, and there have been probably 5 others. So a lot of really nice, beautiful things come out of it. But that first season was very memorable to me. And then I would say the other seasons that stand out to me tend to more be about locations that we went or countries or memorable shoots, more so than like necessarily who the Bachelor was or who he ended up with. Because again, I don't get like personally involved in that.
I remember that whole Trista Ryan thing because people said, well, maybe it's because the woman chose the man this time that it worked finally.
Yeah, we have had a few bachelorettes. That's right. We have had, but we've also had bachelors. But yeah, I don't know the dynamics of it. That's for the viewers to have their own feelings about.
Oh, there are lots of feelings. Lots of feelings.
Lots of feelings. I know. A lot of opinions. And I'm sure we haven't gotten everything right all the time, but there've really been some very nice moments, real connections.
I don't know if you know about this stuff, but you did mention that you work with like wardrobe. And so Sarah P asks, do they have professionals do their hair and makeup, or do they choose their own outfits?
I'm not 100% sure. I think that information is available online. I believe to provide hair and makeup for everyone all the time would be kind of like impossible. So I think they come with their own wardrobe and they do their hair and makeup, and they bring like suitcases full of, because they don't know how long they'll be there. So they have to bring a lot of dresses. But again, that is better for us not to provide because it's a window into who they are, you know? So if a gal does her hair a certain way or her makeup a certain way or wears a certain dress, that's part of, you know, the image that she's presenting. And whether the Bachelor likes it or not, you know, that's all part of real life. I think it's on them, as it should be.
Okay, I'll ask one more. And I think this is more in the producers, but Nate S. asks about how contestants are molded into characters. Are their words manipulated?
It's not my area, and I don't involve myself in that. But I can tell you one thing, which is that if that were true on our show, it wouldn't still be on the air. It just wouldn't. The shows that have come and gone are those shows that have done that. The shows that last are the ones that you feel you're watching something real happening. The goal is for people to say real things about real feelings, and not everything airs. You know, if we sit around and talk about the weather, like, we're not putting that on TV because you don't want to watch that on TV. People always say, like, where do you find these people? Like, really? Have you been out? It's like they're everywhere. They sign up. And also now, especially, people are so familiar with like videotaping themselves, and they're always on their phones, and they're always doing TikTok video. I mean, it's just a whole generation of people who are very comfortable being on camera. So it's not like a stretch to find funny, interesting, or villainous people to behave badly, like, or well.
They're out there.
It's out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it may not be people you recognize in your daily life and you go, oh my God, that's crazy. Like, no one would say that. And it's like, yeah, the people are out there who say stuff like that, you know?
And I think you recognize it enough that it resonates, and that's why people keep watching. Like you said, you know, it's familiar enough that.
Right. Everyone has a niece who has a friend who's wacky and wants to go on a reality TV show, you know? And remember, it's a small subsection of people who are like choosing to go on the show. So they have their own reasons, you know?
Yeah. How many people are around you usually? Do you have like an assistant director, and what's your general crew?
Non-COVID, there's like an assistant director or a team of ADs sort of near me and also out on the floor. And then there's cameras and ACs and audio mixers. And there's an art department, there's a lighting department. But again, we all sort of stay in the background until needed. But the crew size is like a small crew will be 60 people and a big crew will be, 300.
Wow.
Yeah. I like the lean shoots. I like sometimes like those small shoots where everybody's wearing like 3 hats because, you're kind of all in it together. And then, sometimes on the bigger shows, you're like, oh, he does this and we have to wait for him to do this. And, she's not here yet. So we have to,
You're happy to pitch in to do a bunch of different jobs.
I'm always getting yelled at, like, don't move the furniture.
Stay in your lane, Ken.
Stay in your lane. I know. Sometimes I never was good at that, drawing in the lines.
So as a kid, I wanted to go back. I think one thing you and I might have in common is both our dads were professors. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes. So what, if any, feedback did you get about wanting to get into a creative field? Was that encouraged?
God. Oh, no. Academics? No. TV? No. Nobody watches TV. But, I have to say I was the fourth of 4 children, so I think they understood the value of like supporting me and letting me explore different things. And it sort of went pretty well right from the beginning. I mean, I just stayed in production my whole life and I always had work and paid my bills. So I think they figured overall. And then getting into the DGA and joining the Directors Guild and starting to assistant direct and then direct, that was like a big, big step in terms of like my
legitimacy
career. Yeah, just like, well, it's funny. My dad was like in the checkout line at the supermarket one day, and I must have been like 40. Well, let's see, 40. I was older, and the cover was like The Bachelor all over it or something. And he was like thumbing through it. And after he called me, he goes, I guess you're doing okay. And I'm like, yeah, Dad, I'm doing okay. It's been 20 years, a wife and 3 kids, and all good. And he goes, okay. Hey, just checking. I see your show. One of your programs here is mentioned in this magazine. So I guess people are watching. Yeah.
People are watching. He wasn't watching, but at least people were watching.
He's not watching.
Has he watched?
He watches Shark Tank.
Okay.
And he watches a little Feud. And he does not watch a lot of Bachelor, although he'll watch and then he'll call me the next day and give me the rundown of everything the Bachelor should be wearing and said wrong. And people can't help themselves, right?
Everyone's a critic.
Oh my God. And then he criticizes Mark Cuban and Kevin O'Leary. He should be thinking about it in these terms. He gets very academic about it. So it's really fun. It's fun now. But it's a tough support thing. It's really, really, and I tell people getting into it, like, be ready because not all your friends are going to understand. Like, you'll lose friends along the way, and your family really won't understand because you won't be able to go to someone's birthday party and you're going to miss a family vacation because it's freelance. We're all freelance. We're all day to day, and we're all scrambling and hustling for work, and that never stops. And your support system has to understand that. You don't make plans. Are you available for dinner? I don't know. I'm shooting. So the answer is always no. And for some reason you get out early, maybe you can join some friends, but it's a really, really, really difficult business, but really, really rewarding. And it attracts a certain kind of person, but not for everybody.
I was just talking to a friend about that yesterday who has a 23-year-old son who's a creative type. Uh-huh. And I was telling her that I could relate to him because I feel like he's the type that is going to pursue it because there's no other option.
Right.
If you're a creative person, you just have to go on your creative path and other people won't understand. But the creative people do understand.
Right. That's right. There really is no option. I mean, you can do other things, but you won't be happy. And then if you're not happy, then how great can you be? So we try to encourage it all. And then my sons are going into it. My sons are all in production and it's like scary. It's like, don't you want a real job? But I'd be the last person to discourage them from pursuing it because it's an amazing life. Hopefully you have your loved ones support you and encourage you.
Your career has been exemplary, a real touchstone for them.
Pure luck.
To get to look up to.
But really just luck because, I've worked on brilliant shows that lasted one season. So There's no like rhyme or reason. Or how I even got involved with Bachelor is like a weird little, I was like on the sideline of a kid's soccer game. I was like watching my like 8-year-old play soccer, and there was another dad there watching his kid, and we started talking, and that sort of led to my involvement in The Bachelor. So my advice is go to your kids' soccer games. They hide everyone, and just weird, right? It's so random.
Yeah.
Just there's so much
right place, right time.
Yes, all timing and luck, and who and when you meet, just crazy. My friends from high school who went into like tech, and they're all at Google and whatever, they always say like, "What are you doing 6 months from now?" And I'm like, "I have no idea." And I'm like, "What are you doing 6 months from now?" And they say, "Well, I'm getting in my car, I'm driving to my office, I'm getting at my desk, and I'm doing my job." And their attitude towards me is, how do you live that way? And my feeling towards them is, how do you live that way? Like, I'd feel so trapped and like, I'm not sure I could resolve that within myself. So it's interesting.
I think the lesson is be true to your heart, right? Be true to who you are.
Yeah.
And it works out. I was going to say that the longevity, maybe you feel like it's luck to have, met the person at the soccer game and stuff, but you wouldn't have lasted with that franchise 20 years because of luck. That was because of how you treat people and your work ethic and your skill set and on and on. So there might be some luck, but there's a lot of other elements that are you.
Okay. If you say so.
I say so, and you need to accept it.
Okay. I accept it.
The shows that you work on are really cultural icons,
It's
people love these shows.
It's very unusual. It's very cool. Well, I must say it's not very glamorous. It's not all glamorous. It's just a lot of hard work, and people think it's like Hollywood is some kind of giant party and glamorous, like walk the red carpet. And most of the time it's just a job, and you're kind of like doing the job. And then there's moments that are just incredible that you could never have anywhere else. But most of the time it's kind of like a lot of meetings and planning and,
I think the core of it, though, like you said earlier, you're a storyteller, and that's what's so cool. In the end, the meetings and the sitting in the truck and all of that, what you're doing in the end, it's all adding up to is a creative mode of storytelling, and that's just fun.
That's right. We're always servicing the end goal, and sort of clarity and being concise and sort of drilling down on what that is and understanding the viewers, I guess, to some degree. But it is fun, and it's rewarding, and it's the people. It's an unusual band of misfits, and I think for people who don't have that, it's sort of like, wow, that's kind of cool.
You made it happen. I think that's really admirable. Well, I love people that follow their passion.
But it was the only place I fit in. I mean, really, Elizabeth, like in high school, I was like kind of a misfit. Like I didn't really have a group exactly. I didn't really know where to fit in. I wasn't sure what I was good at. And then my first day on my first show, they gave me a walkie talkie. They said, go down the end of the street. When we yell rolling, you stop the cars. And when we yell cut, you let them through. And I remember walking down there and thinking, I can do this. And I was good at it. Like I would schmooze the people in the car so they wouldn't get mad. And then I came back that day and I gave them in my walkie-talkie, and they said, we want you back tomorrow. And that was it. That was it. Because I was hired for one day.
You're hooked.
And I was hooked. And I went home and I thanked my lucky stars. I was like, thank you for this happening and falling into my lap. And I knew one day I was done. This was it. These are my people.
Wow.
And I think that's sort of the hard thing to find sometimes is your people.
But you didn't know then that it was going to be directing, right?
No,
it was a bit of a circuitous path.
Yeah. And that's
to get there.
And that's
yeah.
Okay.
You just knew that it was production.
Yes, I knew I was joining the circus. And we really are. We're like carnies, we like go from town to town. We put up our tent, we do the show. And I knew that was for me. I've gotten people jobs, and a day later, they're like, I don't think I can come back tomorrow. And I'm like, that's cool. I told you you'd know right away. And they didn't get it. They just didn't get it.
And good to know.
Yeah, totally good. Yeah, try everything.
Mm-hmm.
But you said like this ladder, the circuitous route. I think it's just circuitous by nature. But again, you have to embrace that. You have to embrace the unemployment between shows, between projects, and looking for work and putting yourself out there. And also like what direction you go. Like, you're going to learn editing or camera or art or lighting or production, like production coordinating, production management, line producing, budgets. Are you going to be on that end? Are you going to be on the writing end or the story end or the producing cast? None of that has like a playbook. Whereas in the corporate world, you're sort of like, okay, I do this and then I do this. And then 3 years later, I can move to this. And then in 10 years, I'll be here. And there's a salary structure. And that is very comforting to a lot of people. And for me, it was terrifying. Like, who makes those rules? Like, I wanted to be in a place that had no rules.
I had a similar thing in my first job out of college. Well, I first went to cooking school because I thought I wanted to be a food writer. And then I was like, oh, I guess everyone was saying you need a job, you need benefits. I worked in PR in food. And it was this: assistant account executive, senior account executive, director of accounting. I mean, all this stuff. I was miserable. I was stifled. And I was like, this is the ladder. And after 9 months, I quit. And the higher up people were so mad at me. They were like, no, you don't quit. You go up the ladder. And I was like, I am out. I'm a creative person. Like, I am terrified of this ladder. But they just felt like, in fact, one of them lectured me and said, this isn't school. You don't get summer break after 9 months. And I was like, I'm not looking for summer break. I don't want this job.
Yeah.
But it was really crazy because they were like personally affronted that I didn't want their thing. And I was like, listen, different things for different people. Well, this just isn't me.
That's just it. Or they were jealous that they couldn't move because they had kids and mortgages or whatever.
That could have been it.
Maybe that's it too. You know, you get stuck sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, Ken. It's really been nice to talk to you. Ken is so successful and yet remains so humble. I really admire that, and I do think it could be one of the keys to his continuing success. Here are some of my takeaways from our conversation. Number 1, establish a chain of command, but not a chain of respect. An atmosphere of inclusion and equality benefits everyone, even those in leadership positions. 2, prepare, plan, do your best, but be willing to deviate from your plan. If it all goes off the rails, you can still love it and make it great. 3, perfection should never be the goal. The rougher the edges, the better. 4, stay true to yourself. Something that's right for one person isn't necessarily right for you. Each person has unique gifts and passions. 5, there is no wrong. And finally, number 6, look for and embrace the happy mistakes in life. My deep thanks to Ken Fuchs for taking time out of his very busy schedule to talk with me. And thank you for listening. If you'd like to learn more about our podcast, please go to our website, theexperiencepodcast.net. You can also find all of our past episodes there and sign up for our newsletter. And if you're enjoying this podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you'd rate, review, and subscribe, and tell some friends about it. I'm Elizabeth Pearson Garr. Thanks for joining The Experience.